today is take heed to yourself lest you forget. Two keywords. Take heed, pay attention, forget. The base sermon is based upon the Deuteronomy 4:9. This is the example of our nervous system, and this is the neuron, and this neuron, and pay attention to here. And one neuron reaches out to give something, the other neuron, the other side, reaching out to take and receive. So there is a give and take, give and take. Okay? A memory is a retrieval, it's a reconstruction of pieces of together information from the different parts of the brain and into a cohesive and meaningful life events, which is worthy of memory. So take-home points. This is the main points, and I'll come back and then summarize. We forget because keywords. We don't review, we don't repeat enough. Number two, solution to our forgetting is what? Review and repeat in 2 days. Memory, do you think the memory goes forever? No. Memory deteriorates over time. And memory trigger, see, something to hook and make you remember. Memory trigger or memory cue are very good memory retrieval technique, and this is a punchline. Moses used the Exodus story as a memory trigger, memory cue, to remind Israelites two things: creation story and then the Sabbath day story. So Deuteronomy 4:9. Going back to verse 9, the Bible goes this way. Take heed to yourself and diligently keep yourself lest, keyword, you forget the things your eyes have seen, lest you depart from your heart all the days of your life, and teach them to your children and your grandchildren. Now going to verse 4:23, Deuteronomy. Take heed, means pay attention. Take heed to yourself, lest you forget the covenant of the Lord your God, which he made with you. Make for yourselves a carved image in the form of anything which the Lord your God has forbidden you. Keyword, take heed, lest you forget. Deuteronomy 6:12. Then be aware, lest you forget the Lord who brought you out of the land of Egypt from the house of bondage. This keyword, this concept, comes over and over and over again in the Deuteronomy. Now, this is the Moses. This is the Moses, and then what those Israelites came from? They came from Egypt. So they came and they go through the Red Sea, and they're almost reaching this side. And then before those people get up, and Moses said, turn around and say, look, remember. What do you remember? Remember what Lord has done for you. Deuteronomy 5:15. Okay. Which one? It's okay. Deuteronomy 5:15. The Bible says, remember you are slaves in the land of Egypt. The Lord your God brought you out from there by a mighty hand, by an outstretched arm. Therefore, the Lord your God commanded you to keep the Sabbath day. Okay? So, the Deuteronomy 5:15. Okay? Remember that you are a slave in the land of Egypt. The Lord your God brought you out from there by a mighty hand, by an outstretched arm. Therefore, the Lord your God commanded you to keep the Sabbath day. So that's so always this concept comes. Okay, you are slaves in the Egypt, and the Lord your God helped you. So this slide is very important, and this is a key slide. I want you to pay attention. Here is the y-axis. There is this x-axis, y-axis. Now here is the Moses. Moses always brought you back to the point of origin. Okay, this is the point of origin. What is the point of origin? Point of origin is the story of Exodus, Why? Because who is the main character of the story of Exodus? It's a God. Okay? And then who did the creation story? God is the author of the creation story. And who made the Sabbath? God. So Moses always reminds Israelites this is a point of origin. That is the Exodus story. And then God is also God's the main character. This brings you back the creation story and the Sabbath story. So this slide is the main point for today's presentation. Exodus 28. Those girls repeated this one. Verse 8. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. 6 days and you shall labor, do all your work. But the seventh day is the Sabbath of the Lord your God. In it you shall do no work, you nor your son, nor your daughters, or your male servant, or female servant, or cattle, or your stranger who is within your gate. For in 6 days the Lord made the heavens, and the earth, and the sea, all that is in them, and rested the seventh day. Therefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and hallowed it. Remember? See? Moses connects the Sabbath day and the creation story, and then blessed. So that's the verse, Exodus 28. Now, what's the point? Let me just summarize. You are slave in Egypt. It's a bad situation. You are stuck. Can you do anything? No. And Pharaoh said, no, you are not going anywhere. You cannot do anything to get you out of this miserable situation. It's a hopeless situation. Now the Lord your God steps into the picture. What does the Lord do? The Lord your God performs a series of miracles and wonders. Then what happened? You are allowed to leave Egypt, being led and guided by the mighty hand of the God. So now the hopeless situation turned into a hopeful situation. It's changed. Negative situation to the positive situation. You are no longer a slave to the king Pharaoh, and you are indeed a free moral being in the eyes of the Lord. That's very important. Then key points. The Lord your God is the author and creator of the whole universe, including the earth. That's the creation story. The Lord your God is the author of the Sabbath day for the sake of human beings. This is the Sabbath story. So you see the connection. Creation story and Sabbath story is very closely connected. So what is Moses doing? Verse 11, the Lord your God is the author and creator of the whole universe. That's the creation story. And then the Lord your God is the author and creation of the Sabbath day story. Okay? And then the Lord your God is the very one who gets you out of the bonds of slavery in Egypt. So that's the Exodus story. So this is how I construct this slide. Moses reminded Israelites three things. First, Exodus story. What does Exodus story bring? That brings a remind you of the creation story. Creation story will remind you of the story of the book of Genesis. That's the Sabbath day story. So this is a very important point. Who is the main character of the Exodus story? That's the Lord God who did all the wonders, the miracle. And then who is the main character of the creation story? Of course, that's the Lord and God. And who creates the Sabbath story, Sabbath day? That's the Lord. So that's the one after another. It's a trigger. Memory triggers Exodus story, creation story, and Sabbath day story. So once again, I mentioned to you, Moses always reminded his Israelites. It's called point of origin. What is the point of origin? Exodus story, God is the main character, and then creation story and Sabbath day story. Going on Deuteronomy 8:2. And you shall remember the Lord your God led you all the way these 40 years in the wilderness to humble you and test you to know what was in your heart, whether you would keep his commandment or not. It's Deuteronomy 8:18. And you shall remember the Lord your God, for it is he who gives you power to get wealth, that he may establish his covenant, which he swore to your fathers, as it is this day. See, remember and remember. Now we're moving into Deuteronomy 16:12, and you shall remember that you are a slave in Egypt. You shall be careful to observe these statutes. Remember, see, this theme keep coming back as you go through the book of Deuteronomy. Okay? Now in the Deuteronomy 24:18, but you shall remember you are a slave in Egypt, and the Lord your God redeemed you from there. Therefore, I command you to do this thing. Deuteronomy 24:22, you shall remember that you are a slave in the land of Egypt. Therefore, I command you to do these things. Did you beginning to see the main theme? Always, as you go through the journey, like this is the X-ray, and this is the X-axis, the Y-axis, and where you are at. As you go through this journey of life, Moses always pointed where? It's a point of origin. Remind his people, remember, point of origin. What is the point of origin? Exodus story. Exodus story brings immediately God, who he was the main character, performed all the miracles, and then that God will connect or remind you of the creation story. That creation story will be connected with the Sabbath. So now going to the the First Chronicles 16:12, he said, remember his marvelous works which he has done, his wonders and the judgment of his mouth. Next Chronicles 16:15, remember his covenant forever, the word which he commanded for 1,000 generations. Now, this is a picture that I want to make illustration. Here, this is the story of Nehemiah. He came back from Babylon to Jerusalem, and he has a huge task to build a wall. And Nehemiah talking to his people, his group, Nehemiah, and say, you build the house, okay, you work hard and you build, and then you stand here and guard, and then keep all the enemies away. So one half of the people work, and one half of the people work as a watch guard. So this guy is watching the enemies, and the other people are working. So in that scenario, under that circumstance, remember, pay attention to this word. Nehemiah talking to his people. I means Nehemiah. Nehemiah 4:14. I means Nehemiah looked and arose, said to the nobles, to the leaders, to the rest of the people, do not be afraid of them, means enemies. Remember, keyword again, remember the Lord great and awesome. And you fight for your brethren, your sons and your daughters and your wives and your houses. Remember, Moses reminded Israelites of point of origin. What is the point of origin? That is Exodus story, God and creation, Sabbath. Nehemiah, as you go through the Old Testament, Nehemiah doing exactly the same thing. Remember the point of origin, and meaning the Exodus story, what the God has done for you, creation story, and Sabbath, and then be courageous and fight for your sons, and wives, and daughters, and so forth. So you see the pattern? Moses did exactly the same thing, remind them of the point of origin. Nehemiah is also doing the same thing. Remind them. What is the point of origin? Exodus story, and then creation story and Sabbath story. So, remember what God has done for you by his invisible hands in the past. Be courageous, be of good cheer, and be brave to put one foot in front of another and move on. So, next portion of the presentation is a little bit related to the health issue, but question. I like a question answer. Question, why do you forget? Why do you forget? First of all, do you forget? Answer is yes. Okay? Why do you forget? It's because we don't repeat, we don't rehearse, we don't retrieve, we don't repeat. So that's very important. But next question, what does remember means? Remor is meaning it's a mindful memory in the Latin word. Re means again. Okay? So when you say repeat, means you repeat. Retrieve, remove it. review, you go back again. Recapture, you capture and you capture one more time, recapture. Revisit, you go and go one more time, revisit. So means repeat, repeat, repeat. Memor means mindful and then memory. So that's the original background of it, remember. So question, why not remember? That's because we forget. Why do you forget? Now, stay in tune for answer, don't go anywhere. Okay? So, question, do we remember more or less over time? What do you think? Okay? Remember that you're correct. We remember less because we forget more. That brings the next question, why do you forget? And this brings me into the next discussion. It's called the forgetting curve. Okay? Then I will bring this gentleman. His name is Hermann Ebbinghaus. He is a German psychologist who pioneered the experimental study of the memory, and so that's why I want to give a credit to him. And he's the first one mentioned. It's called forgetting curve, because we didn't know what's happening in the brain. But he said, yeah, there is a certain thing happening in the brain. And this called forgetting curve simply means you remember at the point, and as the time goes by, your memory goes down, 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 down. And the amazing thing is this. In 3 days, you remember only 40%. That means about 6% of this thing is already gone. You forget. Think about it. In 3 days, you remember only less than half. Only 40% you remember. It's a very humbling to admit. So, is there any cure? Answer is yes. Okay, this is this is a forgetting curve. But when you come here and repeat, go up. Okay, and push up, and this coming down, and you repeat again, go up, and then coming down. Forgetting curve coming down. But also you repeat again and coming down, and repeat and go up and come. So what's the story? If you repeat, if you revisit, you rehearse, you're able to maintain your, this is the learning curve, okay? It's going up. But if you do nothing, what would happen? Your memory will continue to deteriorate over time. So that's a very important piece of information. And in 2 days, you remember here? In 2 days, this is what we hear. It is very awesome, humbling realization. We're not perfect. So the main point of this slide is this. If you do nothing, your memory continues to deteriorate, and then you don't remember very much at the end of this session. Okay, but if you repeat at interval, and then you're able to maintain your memory and keep up. So that's the key point. If you don't want to forget, go back and review and rehearse and review and revisit. So that's the same. Memory decay over time. But repetitions, keywords, repetition, save and review, revive your memory. That's the whole point. Now, what's this one? I'm going to say, okay, 10% of what we read, you remember. 20% of what you hear, 30% of what you see, 50% of what we see and hear, 70% of what you discuss, 80% of what we experience, 95% what we teach. Okay? I said, that's quite an interesting piece of information. So I rewrote this information in this slide. Remember this one? When you read, you remember only 10%. Amazing. But when you hear, that's audio. When you see, that's the eye. Okay? When you hear, that's audio. It's only 20% or you remember. But when you see with your eyes, you remember about 30%. But watch this one. When you combine hearing and seeing, audio, visual, what will happen? Your memory increases to 50%. But that's not the end of the story. When you discuss this issue with somebody else, okay, you grab your friend or somebody and then and discuss, your memory goes up 70%. And when you experience, it goes 80%. But the best one is to grab someone and you go over the material and teach. See, in order for you to teach, you have to know the material. So this will increase your memory to 90%. So what's the key point? Okay, before I leave this slide, find someone to discuss. Okay, that will increase your memory to 70%. If you have nobody to discuss, grab the cat and just talk to the cat. You have something to discuss. So that will help your memory. And then if you grab someone, and then also go over the material. The teaching is one of the best way to maintain your memory. So it's an important point. How memory works is very interesting. If you work with the computer, and you probably understand, when you send something in a network, you send the signal, boom! And when the signal does not come back, it's called ping. Network is not working. So memory is just like this. When you send the signal, boom! And when the signal is bounced back and come back to you, that network is complete, is working. Memory is very similar. And I'll explain to you. So when we talk about the memory, I have to explain this area in the brain. Okay, right here, this is the brain, this is the ear, and right in this part of the brain, okay, this is where the hippocampus, sounds very word, it's not a hippopotamus, it's a hippocampus, okay? So this is located right here around the ear. Now this is a very important part because this is the area who controls your memory, okay? So when the information comes from the eyes, from the nose, from the mouth, and for taste, and for the hearing, for the skin, we call the five senses. So where is all the five senses? Mostly is here. Okay? Eye, nose, mouth, taste, and then hearing. So this is very important. And for the skin, so the sensation. Those information will come in and go through and stored in the different parts of the brain. And eventually, they will store in the hippocampus right here around it. It's called short-term memory. And over time, it is transferred to the long-term memory. That's good. Now, if I show you next slide, and this is how the memory. If I show the bunch of numbers, doesn't mean anything. And the next, in 30 seconds, you don't remember anything. I bet you don't remember anything. But if I give you this one, oh, by the way, this is the birthday, and this is the anniversary, this is your children's, all of a sudden, those numbers mean something. Don't you remember? Don't you agree? Yeah. If I did search going, this number show you and say, doesn't mean anything. Next slide. You don't even, you don't have even clue what those numbers are. But the minute I show this, oh, by the way, this is somebody's birthday, this is somebody's birthday, this is a wedding, this day, and this. So all of a sudden, those memory right here, it sticks with you. Why? Because you attach some meaning. Okay? So this is how it works. Once you are in a long-term memory, if they're attached with the meaning, it will stay. But if you show it a bunch of numbers like this, you will never be able to retrieve. So that's the point. So what's happening inside the brain, because memory are stored in the brain, not in the bones, not in the liver. I've already mentioned this today. It's a very important point. And the hippocampus, this is a very important point here. This is the part of the brain. It's right here, the ear, and this is where the hippocampus is located, right there. When all the information comes from the eyes, nose, mouth, and then ears, the skin, they go through our system and stored in the different parts of the brain, and hippocampus will store for short-term memory here. Okay? And then what happened was, as the short-term memory is stored, and then also long-term memory is stored in this part of the brain, or the hippocampus, and then they store the different parts of the information in a different parts of the brain. For instance, I'll show you this one. Okay, this is called all the brain comes in, and as the information comes in, the visual information are stored right here in the back of the brain. It's called occipital lobe, and then also here's the ear. Okay, so when the ear, so all the hearings information are stored in the auditory canal. All the movement, okay, all the playing the piano, playing the guitars and violin, those movements that you learn are stored in the part of the brain. It's called the parietal lobe. All the sensations are stored in the different parts of it. So those information are stored in different parts of the brain, but when time comes, amazing thing is once those memories are stored in the long term in hippocampus, just like I mentioned to you, I showed a bunch of numbers, doesn't mean anything to you. The minute I say, oh, by the way, this is anniversary, wedding anniversary. Oh, you remember because it's already there. Huh? And then you retrieve this long-term memory back and say, oh yeah, here is my wedding picture. Okay? So it's very important. So that's the point. Okay? So what's the point of this slide? Our memory was stored, different parts of the memory are stored in different parts of the brain. Short-term memory, you can just repeat and you can repeat back, that's a short-term memory. But the long-term memories are stored in this part of the brain, and once you attach the meaning, you remember. Yeah. Okay? So, forgetting simply means a memory retrieval failure. You cannot retrieve, you cannot pull back. Data was there, but you cannot pinpoint where it is. Memory trigger, see, this is a very important point. Memory trigger or memory cue or memory hook or memory peg is something to remind you, just like Moses was doing. Moses used an Exodus story to remind Israelites of what God has done for them. Okay? So, another example. When you see the graduation cap, doesn't mean anything, but when you see the graduation cap, all of a sudden, it's a trigger. It's something to give you the cue. It's called memory cues or memory trigger. When you see the graduation cap, all of a sudden you remember your graduation from the college or your high school or school, and then you remember what kind of backpacks that you wear to carry the textbook. You even remember studying for the final examination in the library. So all the detail will come right back. By just simply looking at the graduation cap, right? Because memory, this is serving as a memory trigger to bring all these experiences that are already stored in your brain. Another way of explaining the same concept, here is a file cabinet. Okay, you hear the graduation. Oh, all right. So where shall we go? You go to this. Okay, I'm going to go to this cabinet, and then you pull this cabinet out. And then I want to have a graduation picture. And say, okay, and then go here, and then, that's right. So this is the graduation folder picture that's already there. So this is how we organize the material in the office. Okay? So, our brain is able to recall old memories by piecing together, okay, all the various elements to create vivid memory of the past, which is worthy of memory. Okay? Hippocampus, which I mentioned to you right here, located near the ear. Hippocampus is the one connect the various parts of the brain, bring them together into one holistic, cohesive events, or neural network represent the specific life events worthy of the memory from the past. In other words, when you see all the kinds of experience you go through, they are stored in different parts of the brain. They're not destroyed. It's there. But simply you do not know where to go and pull them out. That's all. See, it's already there, but you can pinpoint where to go. But if you can find out the trigger, the memory trigger, and you're able to pull out. Okay? So that's very important. Okay? Hippocampus. So, our human memories are not stored in the books. Most of the time when we go to the library, we look at this and say, okay, we'll pull this book, and then you get the data. But our brain is not structured that way. Otherwise, you just run out of the space. See, library, you have a book here, and you have to add more space. But our brain is already limited. But the way that our information is stored in our brain, you can store enormous amount of information with such a very small space. And how to do it? This is the point. Here's the memory. Here's the circle and triangles and so forth. That's the memory. And then over time, what will happen? Memory decay. Okay? You disappear. This goes out. 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 So it's gone. Okay? It goes out. Then all of a sudden, you hear something, or graduation cap, something like this. It's called memory trigger. all of a sudden, what will happen? Boom, 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 boom. See? You remember? This is how our brain works. And then you reconstruct, putting all the pieces, small bits of information together, and then say, yep, this is my wedding picture. Yep, this is my son's graduation picture. Yeah, this is how our brain works. Okay, it's not our memory is not a reproduction. It's not exact taking a picture, a copy of the picture. It's not a reproduction. It's a reconstruction. You're recreating, bring all the different pieces together. Okay, but it's done by this one, memory trigger. Very important. Something to trigger your memory. Memory trigger. Okay. Once again, memory retrieval is a reconstruction of the piece of information from the different parts of the brain into a cohesive and meaningful life events worthy of the memory. Just like this. If I just show this bunch of numbers, doesn't mean anything. But as soon as I say, yeah, this number is my birthday. This number is my wedding anniversary. This number is my family's siblings' birthday. All of a sudden, it's there, you never forget. Why? Because you attach the meaning to the life events. Okay? So, I've already covered this one. I'm going to give you a little different illustration. Our brain, the network, is just like this. This is the electric tower, the power line. They're connected with a wire. Our brain is very similar, but this analogy. This is a picture of our brain. Look at this neuron, and this is a neuron. But when you look at this connection site, pay attention here. We call synapses. Okay, one neuron is reaching out, the other neuron is reaching out to receive. One is to give the impulse, the other neuron is to reach out to receive it. So it's a give and take, give and take. It's very good. But watch this one. This is a neuron, and this is another neuron. And we're going to look at this one very carefully, okay? That we call synapses. Pay attention right here. This is the neuron coming here. This is another neuron. But between this, the arms reaching out, do you see, are they connected or they are not connected? Answer is, there is a gap. It's not contact. It's not in direct contact. There's a gap. There's a space. Ooh, there's a problem. Okay. So how do you reconcile? How do you solve this problem? One neuron is trying to give the impulse and the electric impulse. The other neuron wants to receive, but there is no connection. How do you solve this? There's a synapse. There's a gap. Okay. We call synaptic cleft. Answer is this, it's called the neurotransmitter. It's a chemical, pushes out and swims over, go across this space, and then reach the other side of the shore. Okay, so this side of the neuron is try to give away the chemical, and this chemical travel this space and reach the other side, and then carry on the impulse. That's good. This area is called synaptic cleft. But you need some chemical. What do we call this chemical? We call neurotransmitter. What this neurotransmitter composed of? That's a very important point. That's the key. See, never learn this concept, acetylcholine. You don't have to remember this one, but I'll give you the importance of this substance, acetylcholine. Why? Because acetylcholine is the main ingredient of this neurotransmitter, which means if you don't have enough acetylcholine, if you don't have enough neurotransmitter, this nerve cannot connect each other. Then that's not good. That means your brain is not working because the network is not working very well. So that's the point. So important question and answer. What is the key element to fashion the neural connection between the nerve, which powers the information sharing network of the brain or mind? Another question is, what neurotransmitter, those chemical, what is neurotransmitter responsible for increased memory retention, clear focus, confident decision making, or another way of saying the mental function in good shape? Answer is this. Don't miss it. It's acetylcholine. Okay? It's very important chemical, acetylcholine. Why this is important? Because But acetylcholine is the key. Connecting this neuron, there is a little gap we call synaptic cleft. Between this synaptic cleft, this transmitter will move from this side to the another side. But in order for this neurotransmitter to work properly, you need one ingredient that is called acetylcholine. So if you have it, if you have a good amount of a neurotransmitter, and then you can connect, and you connect, and then at the end of the day, your brain works much better. So, keyword, acetylcholine. So this brings up a very next important question. Okay? The more neural impulses travel along the neural network pathway, that means hippocampus, central processing center, the more stable the neural network pathway becomes. That's stable. Okay? Number 2 point, it's very fast. Okay? The faster the memory retrieval becomes and more accurate. Another way of saying this, I say something, the number, and I say it doesn't remember anything, doesn't mean anything to you now. But as soon as I say, this is my wedding anniversary, that's important. Store it in your brain. You have memory trigger. You see the pictures. Yep, but that's wedding anniversary. Okay, or your son's graduation picture. All of a sudden, you pull that up, and then in order for this to happen, all the neuron has to work together and work very close. In this circumstance, when you have a good amount of acetylcholine, good amount of a neurotransmitter, then these parts of the brain can talk to each other, and it's very stable, faster, and very accurate. That makes sense? But if this neuron is not talking to each other, and say, this number, and say, this number doesn't mean anything. And they say, well, I know it's something, but I cannot remember what it is. That means you're trying to look for, but this neuron is not talking to each other. So that's the point I'm saying. The neurotransmitter, the more neurotransmitter you have and in good shape, it becomes stable, network is very stable, and it's very fast, and then more accurate. Make sense? So,
what do we know about the inner workings of the human mind? Surely everything that humans do, from designing skyscrapers to composing symphonies, is not the product of simple cellular interactions. And yet it might be. Because everything that humans do, or think, or feel, is a result of these basic units of brain structure, the neurons. The human brain contains more than 100 billion neurons. Just like a single ant could never build an anthill, a single neuron can't think or feel or remember. A neuron's power is a result of its connections to other neurons. Each neuron is connected to as many as 1,000 of its neighbors. These trillions of connections provide the playing field upon which the complex activity of the brain takes place. Each neuron can turn its neighbors on or off depending on the signal it sends. And the resulting stable patterns of neuron firing represents memories and images and thoughts. We don't yet understand the relationship between neural activity and mental experience. We don't know what the precise pattern of memory or an image or a thought looks like. We don't yet know how to read the cerebral code of the neurons, but progress is being made. We can now watch exactly how various stimuli and memories cause the firing of hundreds of neurons. Perhaps these techniques will allow us to work our way up from the activity of a few neurons to see the structure that emerges from the whole.
I was showing in this slide was this. Once this neuron and this neuron, in your brain, they're talking each other, firing, it's good. But if this neuron, they're not talking each other, they're not firing each other, that means your brain is not working. That means you cannot remember, you cannot retrieve, you cannot recall. So that's the main point I was making. That was the main point of that slide video. Okay? So, the method of improving memory. So what can you do? Focus your attention on the subject. In other words, don't divert your attention. Very important. focus your attention so that your brain can concentrate. And elaborate and rehearse, keywords. Rehearse, repeat, review, revisit, and retrieve. That's the keyword. Okay? Everything is read. Okay? Rehearse, repeat, review, revisit, and retrieve. And also visualize. See, if you put your mind, okay, what is this concept? If you visualize, it will stay much better. And relate the new information, but you just don't learn the new information on top of the old one. Okay? You learn something, but how this new information relates to the older one that you knew already. Read aloud. Very important technique. Read out loud. Next. Audio is very good, better than nothing. Reading is very good, better than nothing. But when you combine audio and visual, meaning hearing and also the seeing, is much better than hearing alone or visual alone. Okay, next one. Find someone to discuss the subject with. Very important. Yeah. If you do, your memory goes up. And find someone to teach. Okay, someone to teach. And sleep. How many hours do you sleep? Minimum 6 hours a day at night. You need that sleep. Because during the sleep, our short-term memory is transferred to the long-term memory, and during sleep, long-term memory is reorganized and structured and put it into different parts of the brain correctly, so that when you need it, your hippocampus will say, yep, go this part of brain, yep, and you can just retrieve, recall, and revisit. So, now next, very practical information. What you see on the left is the human brain. What you see on the right, what do you think it is? It's a walnut. Okay? This brings up the next slide. Okay? So what is good, what is not good for your brain? So I'll give you a very practical advice. First one is the walnut, and the avocado, and the salmons, and the cumin, and the dark chocolate, egg, and coconut, and all the berries, blueberries, okay? And then also the green teas, and then also the pumpkin seed. So this is very good for your brain. And then I summarize this way, okay? Okay, walnut, avocado, salmon, turmeric, dark chocolate, eggs, coconut oil, blueberry, all the berries, blueberries, blackberries, strawberries, and raspberries, okay? Green teas and pumpkin seed. So I gave you a very good practical of what is good for you. Then, next slide, I'll give you what is not good for you. Okay? So, and what's the whole point? See, remember the keyword is acetylcholine. Why? Because the acetylcholine is very rich in this one. Walnut, avocado, salmon, turmeric, dark chocolate, egg, coconut, blueberries, and so forth. That's the whole reason. Okay? That's the whole reason. Now, this is a slide. This is the food you want to avoid. Okay? So sugary drinks, all the soft drinks, sugars and white flours, and trans fat. What is trans fat? Basically, it's a highly cooked, oily food, highly processed food, and aspartame, and also alcohol and mercury. These items, which I mentioned to you on here, is something to avoid, stay away from, and don't even look at it, because it is will decrease your acetylcholine. They don't have very much acetylcholine in it. I mean, almost zero on the mercury. There is almost zero of the acetylcholine and aspartame, alcohol, and also highly greasy food. So that's the whole point, is acetylcholine. That's the whole point. Okay, acetylcholine, the chemical. So remember in the Bible, I'll just say, Deuteronomy 5:15, remember that you are a slave in the land of Egypt. Remember here. And remember 5:15, that you shall remember that you are a slave in the land of Egypt, and so forth. And then again, Deuteronomy 16:12, remember that you are a slave in Egypt, and you shall care for and observe. And Deuteronomy 24:18, but you shall remember that you are a slave in Egypt, and the Lord your God redeemed you from there. Therefore I command you. And Deuteronomy 24:22, you shall remember that you are a slave in the land of Egypt. Therefore I command you. Do you remember? Do you see the pattern? Always Moses reminded his Israelites and said, point of origin. What is the point of origin? Creation, the Exodus story, And who is the main author and the character of the Exodus story? It's God. And then God is the main author of the creation story and the Sabbath story. So, take-home points. Remember, okay, how do you maintain repetition and review at the space interval, like every 3 days. Okay, so we're wrapping up. We forget because we do not do all the things. We do not rehearse, we don't repeat, we don't review, we don't retrieve enough. Okay? Next, if you repeat, if you rehearse, revisit, and review, your memory, you remember more. In other words, your memory retention increases. Connect the new information and event with the old information. Don't learn on new information as isolated as one entity. Connect the new information. How does it relate to the old information that you knew already? Okay, Moses connected the Exodus story with what God has done for you. That's all he did. And what is Exodus experience? Just an example: parting the Red Sea, and they crossed on a dry ground. Manna, what's the food from heaven? Bread from heaven in the desert. See, they didn't have any Walmart and grocery store to go and buy the food in the desert. Number three, drinking water. See, there is no water in the desert, but the rock supplied the water, and the drinking water. Remember the experience of drinking water and the water gushing out of the rock in the middle of the desert. Those are the memory cues for them to recall what God has done for you, and then this will connect to the creation story and Sabbath story. Moses connected the creation story with the meaning of Sabbath. Memory retention deteriorates over time. That's very important. It's that correct statement. Memory deteriorates over time. In 3 days, you remember only 40%. That means 60%, majority of the stuff you heard and saw is gone. It's very humbling. In 3 days, you remember only 40%, less than half of what you learned. It's very humbling. Okay? The Lord your God is the author and creator of the whole universe. That's a creation story. And the Lord your God is the author of the Sabbath story. And then the Lord your God is the very one who gets you out of the bond of the slavery in Egypt. That's the Exodus story. So, Moses used this technique because the reason I gave you the medical scientific explanation of how the brain works, Moses did exactly this. Moses used this memory trigger, memory cues, reminding the Israelites Exodus story. Exodus story immediately reminds you of the creation story, and creation story immediately reminds you of the Sabbath story. Okay? So, this is my last slide of this presentation. Moses used this technique, memory cues, memory trigger, and then they brought Israelites to the point of origin. What is the point of origin? Through this journey, point of origin was always the same. Always they came back to the same point. Exodus story, what God has done for you in the desert. Okay? And then, who is the author? Or who is the main character? It's God. That directly tied into the next thought is the creation story, because God is the main author of the creation story. That creation story tied directly into tied directly with the Sabbath story. Okay? All right. So closing hymn 632.
My heart can sing when I pause to remember. A heartache here is but a stepping stone along a trail paths winding always upward. This troubled world is not my final home. But until then, my heart will go on singing. Until then, with joy I'll carry on. Until the day my eyes behold the city, till the day God calls me home. The things of earth will dim and lose their value if we recall they're borrowed for a while, and things of earth that cause the heart to tremble, remembered there, will only bring a smile. But until then, my heart will go on singing. Until then, with joy I'll carry on. Until the day my eyes behold the city. Until the day God calls me home.
The Father which art in heaven, we're very grateful for the Bible that you gave to us, so we can read it and learn it, and then learn more a beautiful character of your dealing with us, and give us the wisdom how to read the Bible and how to interpret and apply the principle so that we can share the good news with those whom we in contact with for the coming week. Be with each one of the participants in the audience. For Christ's sake, amen. Thank you very much, and the presentation is finished.